Hey there, I'm Abigail Hawkins, but everyone calls me Abby. I'm 25, fresh out of college with a degree in agricultural science, and I'm eager to put my knowledge to work on our family farm. Hawkins Farm has been in our family for generations, and I've got big plans to bring it into the 21st century. Dad, look at these soil reports, I said, spreading out papers on the kitchen table. If we implement crop rotation and sustainable practices, we could boost our yield by 30%. Dad, Frank Hawkins to everyone else, just grunted, sipping his coffee. We've been doing things the same way for 50 years, Abby. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's Dad for you, stubborn as a mule and just as resistant to change. My sister Megan walked in with her husband, Brad, trailing behind. You two arguing about the farm again? She asked, rolling her eyes. Not arguing, I replied, just trying to discuss the future. Brad smirked. Good luck with that. Some of us have real jobs to get to. I bit my tongue. Megan and Brad lived in the city and only visited on holidays. They couldn't care less about the farm, but were always quick to criticize. Later that day, I vented to my best friend Sarah at her organic farm down the road. I just don't get it, Sarah. Why can't Dad see that we need to adapt? Sarah nodded sympathetically. Some people are just set in their ways, abs. But hey, look at what I've done here. Maybe seeing a successful modern farm will change his mind. I sighed, glancing around at Sarah's thriving fields. Maybe. I just wish he'd give me a chance to prove myself. The next day, at my part-time job at the local ag co-op, I was arranging a display of new organic fertilizers when my boss, Tom, approached me. Abby, that proposal you submitted for the community garden project is brilliant. Have you thought about implementing some of these ideas on your family's farm? I laughed bitterly. Oh, I've thought about it plenty. Getting Dad on board is the real challenge. Tom frowned. That's a shame. With your knowledge, Hawkins Farm could be leading the charge in sustainable agriculture around here. His words stuck with me as I drove home that evening. The sun was setting over our fields, painting everything gold. This land was in my blood, and I was determined to see it thrive. I found Dad in the barn, tinkering with the old tractor. Dad, we need to talk about the farm's future. He sighed, putting down his wrench. Abby, not this again. Yes, this again, Dad. The world is changing, and if we don't change with it, we'll be left behind. He hesitated. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I'm thinking of retiring soon. My heart leaped. This was my chance. Really, Dad? That's great. I've got so many ideas for. He held up a hand, cutting me off. Now hold your horses. Retirement's a big step. We need to think carefully about who's going to take over. Something in his tone made me pause. What do you mean? I'm the one who's been working the land. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. We'll discuss it more at the family dinner next week. Just keep an open mind, okay? As he walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Little did I know, my whole world was about to be turned upside down. The family dinner started like any other, with Mom's pot roast and Dad's bad jokes. But the tension in the air was thick as the gravy on our plates. So I've got an announcement to make, Dad said, clearing his throat. As you know, I'm planning to retire soon. I sat up straighter, heart pounding. This was it. I've been thinking long and hard about the future of this farm, he continued, and I've decided I'm handing it over to Brad. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I gasped. Brad's face split into a smug grin. I'm honored, Frank. I'll do my best to live up to the Hawkins name. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, this has to be a joke. I'm the one with a degree in agriculture. I'm the one who's been working this land. Dad shook his head. Abby, running a farm is more than book learning. It takes a firm hand. A man's touch. A man's touch. I repeated, my voice rising. Are you kidding me? This is the 21st century, Dad. Megan piped up. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Abby. It's not like you can't still help out. I rounded on her. Help out? This was supposed to be my future, Megan. Now, Abby, Dad started, his tone patronizing. Let's be realistic. You'll get married someday, have kids. You can't be expected to run a farm on top of that. I saw red. So that's it. My dreams don't matter because I'm a woman. Don't twist my words, Dad snapped. I'm doing what's best for this farm. Best for the farm? I laughed bitterly. Brad doesn't know the first thing about farming. Brad leaned back, smirking. I'm a quick learner. Besides, how hard can it be? I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. This is bull. And you know it, Dad, you're making a huge mistake. Dad's face hardened. My decision is final, Abigail. You can either accept it or what? I challenged. Or you can leave, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Mom looked like she wanted to say something but kept quiet. I looked around at their faces, Dad's stubbornness, Brad's smugness, Megan's indifference. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay. Fine, I said, my voice shaking. I'm out of here. I stormed upstairs and started throwing clothes into a bag, tears blurring my vision. I refused to let the tears fall. As I was leaving, I overheard Dad and Brad talking in the study. Something about loans and missed payments. I paused, listening more closely. Don't worry about it, Dad was saying. We'll figure something out. Just don't mention this to the women, all right? I felt sick. Not only was Dad handing over my birthright to Brad, but he was hiding financial troubles too. I drove straight to Sarah's place, spilling the whole story between sobs. That sexist old goat, Sarah exclaimed. Abby, I'm so sorry. As my tears dried, a new determination set in. I'm not giving up, I said firmly. I'm going to prove to them that I can run a farm better than any man. Sarah grinned. Now that's the Abby I know. What's the plan? I took a deep breath. First, I need more experience. I'm going to apply for that job at AgriCorp. And then, I'm going to build something that'll make Dad eat his words. As I drove away from Sarah's, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. I'm sorry, honey. Your father means well. I turned off my phone without replying. Sorry wasn't good enough. Not anymore. The next morning, I walked into AgriCorp with my head held high. Hi, I'm Abigail Hawkins, and I'm here to apply for the junior exec position. This was just the beginning. They had no idea what was coming. 6 months into my job at AgriCorp, I was driving past the family farm when I noticed something off. The corn looked stunted, yellowish. I pulled over, frowning. What in the world? I muttered, examining a sickly-looking stalk. Just then, old Mr. Jenkins from the neighboring farm walked up. Abby, haven't seen you in a while. You here to help Brad? Lord knows he needs it. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Mr. Jenkins shook his head. That boy's running this place into the ground, using some newfangled pesticides that are killing everything but the weeds. My blood boiled. I thanked Mr. Jenkins and drove straight to Sarah's. We've got to do something, I said. Brad's destroying the farm. Sarah nodded. I've heard rumors. But Abby, what can we do? An idea struck me. We help everyone else, make Hawkins Farm the worst in the county by comparison. And that's exactly what we did. Every weekend, I'd visit neighboring farms, offering free consultations. Word spread fast. Did you hear? Abby Hawkins increased the Thompsons' yield by 40%. The Wilsons' organic transition, all thanks to Abby. Meanwhile, Brad was floundering. I kept tabs through the grapevine, each piece of news worse than the last. One day, I overheard 2 farmhands at the local diner. I'm telling you, it ain't right. Brad's spraying stuff that ain't even legal no more. And the migrant workers, he's paying them peanuts, threatening deportation if they complain. I clenched my fists. This was worse than I thought. I started gathering evidence, photos of illegal pesticides, testimonies from workers, soil samples showing contamination. It was damning stuff. Then came the call from Mom. Abby, it's your father. He's had a heart attack. I rushed to the hospital, my stomach in knots. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, tubes everywhere. The stress, Mom explained tearfully. The farm's in trouble, and he won't let anyone help. I felt a pang of guilt. Had my actions contributed to this? As I left the hospital, lost in thought, I quite literally ran into someone. Oh, I'm so sorry, the woman said, helping me pick up my dropped files. Her eyes widened as she saw the contents. Wait a minute. Is this about Hawkins Farm? I eyed her suspiciously. Who's asking? She stuck out her hand. Alana Vasquez, investigative journalist. I've been looking into agricultural malpractices in the area, and it seems you've got quite the story. We talked for hours at a nearby cafe. Alana was sharp, passionate about exposing corruption in the industry. This is bigger than just your family's farm, Abby, Alana said, her voice steady. It's about workers' rights, environmental protection, and the future of farming in this region. I nodded slowly. I know, but it's still my family. If this gets out, it could ruin them. Alina leaned forward, her eyes serious. Sometimes doing the right thing means making tough choices. The question is, are you willing to make that choice? I stared into my coffee, my mind racing. On one hand, this was my chance to prove myself, to show Dad he was wrong about me. On the other, it could destroy everything our family had built over generations. I need some time to think, I said finally. Elena nodded. Of course, but don't take too long. Stories like this have a way of coming out, with or without us. As I drove home that night, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. What was I willing to sacrifice for justice, for the truth? I pulled over at the edge of our property, looking out over the fields I'd grown up in. The farm was sick, dying under Brad's mismanagement, but it was still home. What would you do, Mom? I whispered, thinking of her quiet strength in the face of Dad's stubbornness. The answer came to me slowly, but with certainty. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out my phone and dialed Elena's number. Hey, it's Abby. I'm in. Let's do this. Elena and I worked tirelessly on our exposé. When it hit, it was like a bombshell. Unethical practices rot local farm from the inside dominated the headlines. The story went viral, sparking outrage and investigations. I watched from afar as Brad was led away in handcuffs, charged with multiple violations. Dad stood in the driveway, looking shell-shocked. One day, as I helped the Wilsons replant, Dad's truck pulled up. Abby, can we talk? He asked, his voice weary. I straightened, wiping my hands on my jeans. I'm busy, Dad. He nodded, eyes downcast. I know, I messed up, Abby. I was wrong about everything. Can you forgive me? For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the betrayal, the pain. No, Dad, I can't. You didn't just hurt me, you hurt this whole community. Some things can't be undone. He flinched but nodded. I understand. I'm proud of you, Abby, for what it's worth. As he drove away, I felt lighter. I was done seeking his approval. With community support and impressed investors, I started Hawkins' New Generation Farm, focused on sustainable, innovative practices. I had proven myself to the world. The Hawkins legacy lived on, not in Dad's old fields, but in the innovations I shared with the next generation. This was my victory, hard-won and sweet. And forgiveness. Some crops just aren't worth replanting. The story of Abby and her fight against injustice on the family farm has come to an end. Now, here's a question for you. Was Abby justified in exposing her family's unethical practices and refusing to forgive her father? Or should family loyalty come before personal ambition and moral principles? Is there a line where exposing a family's wrongdoing becomes the right thing to do, even if it destroys the family's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective could help others wrestling with family conflicts and ethical dilemmas. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel.